Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with Inspiration and Transformation. What is the most important karma? So, karma means action. Karma is an action. What we get in reaction to the actions is what we call the karmic fruit. When people talk about getting good karma or bad karma, it's not actually semantically correct. I'm not a big stickler for semantics, but what you receive is the fruit of the karma. What you do is the karma itself. So, what is the most important karma? Meaning, what is the most important action? Well, I would say the action you're doing in this exact moment. It's the only one you have any control over. All of that which I already did in my past is an arrow that's already flown from a bow. It's gone. I can't rewind history. Unfortunately, we don't get, an undo button. I used to know that I was spending way too much time at my computer when I would try to Control Z something that happened in life. Because on a computer, at least on a PC computer, if you hit Control and the Z key, it'll undo whatever the last thing you did is. It doesn't matter what you did. Hit Control Z and it's undone. And I remember many years ago realizing that I was just spending way too many hours a day at the computer when I would spill a glass of water or say something that I wished I hadn't said, and instinctively my mind would say, oh, well, we'll just Control Z that. And then I had to realize and remember, you can't do that in life. Life doesn't have an undo button. You actually have to go get a sponge and clean up the water you've just spilled. You actually have to deal with, face the words that you've just spoken. And so the only karma we actually have any control over is this one right now. What I've done, I've done. Arrows that have been flung from bows. That which I have yet to do, again, I haven't yet done it. There's no guarantee that a situation is going to arise in which I'll be able to do it. You may think, okay, when I wake up in the morning, first thing I'm going to do is brush my teeth. Okay, it's a reasonable thought for an action. But that's assuming that when you wake up in the morning, you've got an arm that still works, or legs that still work, or that there hasn't been an earthquake and you no longer have a bathroom, or that your water hasn't been shut off, that you've actually still got water coming out of a tap, or that something else hasn't happened in the night to render brushing your teeth no longer the most important thing first thing in that morning, because something else has become more important. So we don't know. The only action I have any control over is right here, right now. What am I doing with this very moment? And I'll give you a little key, little tip. It's actually not so much the what as it is the how. Right? The most commonly used example of that is if I say to you, well, is it good or bad if you take a knife and you thrust it into someone's chest? Well, most of you will say, well, God, it's bad, it's horrible. Wrong action. But if I tell you I'm a surgeon, and the person into whose chest I'm thrusting a knife has just had a heart attack, and if I don't give him or her an operation right now, they are going to die. Well, suddenly it's a great action. Suddenly what I'm doing is saving someone's life. So actually, in the karmic scheme of things, it's the how more than the what. The Mahabharata, the epic of the Mahabharata, especially the Bhagavad Gita, where we're taught about it, but the epic, where the action takes place, is a perfect example of the how actually being even more important than the what. That the intention behind something, the meaning behind it, the presence of the divine there behind the action, being much more important than the nitty-gritties of the actual action. So the most important karma is that which you're doing right now. But not just what the body is doing. What is the mind, the attention, the intention, the self-experience doing in this moment? I may be doing a great action. I could be making sandwiches for poor people to go take out and feed them. I could be writing a check to some wonderful nonprofit organization. But if in my mind I'm begrudging them, or I'm feeling resentful about it, or I'm feeling arrogant about it, like, aren't I so great? Why isn't the world, seeing me and recognizing all these sandwiches I'm making or all this money I'm donating? If my mind is filled with anything other than that total surrender and the joy to serve, I'll still get what we call punya, sort of karmic bonus points for having done the right thing. But not nearly the merit that you get for having done it with your mind in the right place. There's that great story of the two friends, two guys who were going to spend the evening together. And one of them says, I have a perfect idea for our evening together. Let's go to the brothel. And the other one says, God, no, of course, can't go to the brothel. That's sinful. We should go to the temple instead. And the first man says, you only live once. I'm going to the brothel. And he heads off to the brothel, and the other guy, thinking, oh God, I can't believe I was ever friends with somebody like that, heads off for the temple. So the first one spends the night in the brothel doing what they do in brothels. The other one spends the night in the temple, praying. Some point later, they both die. They find themselves heading into the afterworld. The one who went to the brothel finds himself escorted into the heavenly realms. And the one who went to the temple finds himself escorted into the lower realms. And of course, he's furious. He can't believe it. Like, how is this possible? And he takes it up with God, furious. I did all the right things. This guy went to the brothel. You took him into the heavenly realms. I went to the temple. Where am I stuck now? And God said, you were in the temple. Your body was in the temple. But you spent the entire night sitting in the temple thinking about that guy in the brothel. He went to the brothel. His body was there. But he spent the entire night thinking about you in the temple. And so when we talk about karma, it's not just what are my hands doing or my legs doing, but how am I doing it and who is doing it? Who's the I I'm identified with? Who is doing it? And the only karma I have any control over is right here and right now. So you make this very moment one that is filled with awareness, with consciousness, with love, with truth, with sincerity. And then that moves into the next moment. And you fill that one with awareness and consciousness and love and truth. And that moves you into the next moment. And the next moment. And then each moment becomes your most important karma. And before you realize it, you've created your entire destiny from those actions, moment by moment.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit rain.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me. Which is worse, failing or never trying? Never trying is absolutely worse than failing, for one very specific reason. Failing or succeeding is not in our hands. It's in the universe's hands. It's in someone else's hands. I may take an exam. The person who's grading the exam decides that what I've written is not what they were asking, and they give it an F. I might prepare a project, an idea, a presentation. The person I bring it to or the committee I bring it to deems it, nah, they throw it in the trash can. Both of these are what you would call failure, and yet it has nothing to do with me. I've done my part. I've done it to the best of my ability, we hope. If not, then I haven't been sincere. But assuming that I've been sincere in my effort, I've done the best that was called upon me to do. But I have no control over the external world. And so while we certainly may be disappointed or annoyed or even hurt sometimes when the universe doesn't see what we've done as worthy of an A or an A plus or being accepted or being loved, nonetheless, we are able, hopefully, to realize that it's not about me. It's about them. My teacher may have had a massive fight with her husband or his wife that day that put them in an awful mood. And due to that awful mood, they failed me on the exam. Has nothing to do with how well I studied, has nothing to do even with how intelligent what I wrote was, and everything to do with my teacher's cranky mood. Similarly, the boss, in front of whom I present a paper, a report, a proposal, may be in a cranky mood that day. May have had a fight with a loved one. May, for whatever reason, not like me. Maybe they're prejudiced. Maybe they discriminate. Maybe, who knows? And for those reasons, they fail something. Or they cause me to fail. But that has nothing to do with me. It's like doing your very best to plan a beautiful wedding, a beautiful outside wedding, and you do all your due diligence. You plan that wedding for, the time of year when it never rains. And you plan it all beautifully. And then it rains. Well, it could be said to be a failure as far as the fact that, you may feel horrible. Oh my God, this whole thing was a failure. We planned it and then it rained. But when you get out of that emotional reaction for a moment, you realize I really did my best. There really was absolutely no way of knowing that it was going to rain. It's never rained on that year. Just this year, for example, end of October we were having rain. Now I've been in India 26 years. It never rains in October. Ever. Theoretically, the monsoons end September 15th. We've had rain up till end of September over the last several years. This year, literally, by last week of October, we had pouring rains. Never happened. But I mention it because if you had planned a wedding, you would have done it with the most sincere, skillful, efficient, effective, proper planning. But it's out of your hands. The universe decided it's going to rain. Climate change. What are you going to do? But we're able to realize when we take a deep breath that it's not about us, that we are not failures, that yes, it happened as things happen, but we are not the ones at fault. It's not me who failed. On the other hand, if I don't try, that's all on me. That's 100% on me. I did not try. I did not have the courage to risk failure. And so I didn't try, meaning I did not embrace my possibility, my potential, in some cases even my dharma, because I was so afraid of failure. That's on me 100%. And so, yeah, it's much worse not to try, because that's the stuff at the end of your life. Never heard of anybody on their deathbed say, oh my God, I can't believe that stupid teacher failed me, or I can't believe that my boss didn't accept that proposal, or even I can't believe it rained on that wedding day. There's a bit of wisdom that tends to come at the end of life. And we tend not to hold grudges about others. It tends to be much more regret about what we didn't do. I didn't take that risk. I didn't have that courage. I didn't step up, stand up, open my heart. That's the stuff we regret. So, in the decision between not trying and possibly failing, always try. Now that doesn't mean be reckless, it doesn't mean be stupid, it doesn't mean jump into the deep end when you've never learned how to swim. Doesn't mean take all your money and invest it in one stock on a whim because you thought, well, hey, let me try the stock market. It doesn't mean recklessness. It means a courage of knowing that there's an intelligence in you. It's the same courage you can think of as that a caterpillar would use to climb the tree and weave a cocoon, not knowing what it's going to become when it comes out of the cocoon, not even knowing it ever is going to come out of the cocoon, never having seen a butterfly that it identifies as self. The same courage, you could say, that a tree uses when it grows sideways instead of straight up, which you see sometimes when you walk through the forest, right? Those are my favorite, because they're the trees that somehow have that intelligence that says, yeah, I know everybody else is growing straight up, but if I do so, I'm going to suffocate and die. My light is that way. And against everything that you think trees are supposed to do, which is grow up, she grows sideways. So when I think of trying and I think of courage, it's that. It's the acknowledgement of an intelligence in the self. What Puja Swamiji calls the inner GPS. That inner knowing. That even though as a caterpillar, all of my family of caterpillars are still here crawling around as caterpillars, but I'm going to climb the tree. Or as a tree, that even though everyone else is going up, I know I need to go sideways. That knowing in the self. You could call it intuition. It's a way of knowing. That sense within us that says, I just know. And then, of course, the acculturated, indoctrinated part of us says, who are you to know anything? And it scares us out of that. And it pushes us away from our own inner voice. And it says things to us like, what are the neighbors going to say? What are your parents going to think? What if you don't make any money? What if people laugh at you? And it says all of those sorts of things to us in order to distract us from that sense of inner knowing, in order to scare us, in order to keep us in line. It would be like the trees shouting at the one, who are you to grow sideways? Don't you know trees don't grow sideways? What are you, stupid? But she knows. She goes that way. So always try. Don't worry about failure. But make sure that you're connected to inner intelligence rather than a rebellious recklessness. That tends not to get you very many places. But that inner intelligence will show you where to go. And sometimes it succeeds and sometimes it fails. Sometimes it rains on picnics you've planned or weddings you've planned. But at least you know at the end of your days that you've stepped up to every plate of your life that the universe has offered and provided.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. Our surroundings impact us. They increase temptation. We'll take the temptation first, then the anxiety. They increase temptation. They impact us energetically with their values. As you say, they compel me to take a cigarette. It reminds me, very funny, true story. A man I know, a spiritual teacher who used to live in California. He had a friend, he used to tell this story about his friend, who every day on the way to work, this friend would take the bus, get off at his bus stop, walking to work, but right at his bus stop, there was this big pastry store. And every day the guy would go into the pastry store as soon as he got off work and buy pastries and then go to work and eat them. When he went on a diet, he had to stop going into the pastry store, even though it was right there when he got off the bus. And he found that he couldn't stop going into the pastry store. So he went to this man I knew, the spiritual teacher, and he said, "You've got to help me. Somehow do something to help me." He said, "Every day I decide I'm not going to buy pastries today, no pastries today. And then every day, without even realizing it, I find myself sitting at my desk with this bag of pastries." And so the spiritual teacher said to him, "Well, I have an idea." He said, "Why not leave your wallet at home?" And this guy says, "What? You want me to steal them?" Right? The idea that I wouldn't get pastries is so impossible, so inconceivable, that if you're telling me to leave my wallet at home, it must mean that you want me to steal them. The surroundings impact us, absolutely. We are energetic beings. Sit in a library full of people studying, you're much more likely to study than hanging out in your dorm room full of people drinking alcohol and dancing and listening to loud music. But just because the environment impacts us doesn't mean it compels us. Just because there was a pastry store did not mean the guy actually had to walk into it. Just because you are surrounded by people smoking does not actually mean you have to smoke. Any more than sitting at a table of people eating non-veg does not mean that you need to eat a hamburger. I cannot tell you how many tables of people I have sat at. I go to a lot of conferences, a lot of events. I move through a lot of different environments. I have sat at a lot of tables with people who are eating non-vegetarian food. It never would occur to me in a million years, "Oh, well, they're all doing it, therefore why don't I also have a chicken McNugget or a steak?" I mean, you just know, I don't eat that. That isn't food to me. Doesn't matter how many people I'm surrounded by who might be eating hamburgers. There's no chance that I would eat them. And I don't say that in terms of I'm a better person, but just in terms of perspective of when you realize that something is absolutely not you. Doesn't matter how many people around you might be doing it. You're no more likely to do it. That doesn't mean that it isn't more difficult. If you've got a desire, a temptation, an inclination to smoke, even if on your own you wouldn't, and you surround yourself by people who are, yeah, of course, it's going to be harder. But what you have to realize is life is about what I call package deals. One of the really very large and I think very damaging messages that a lot of people are being given these days. Under the desire to make people feel empowered, I think we're actually crippling them. Because the messaging that a lot of people are getting these days is basically, if you can see it, you can create it. If you can envision it, you can manifest it. That essentially you can have anything and everything that you want as long as you can envision it. Now the dilemma with that is I may envision being able to rub my nose like this and kind of simultaneously live in 2 or 3 different places and like Tabitha and Bewitched, and I could envision being able to do that and live in different planes of existence simultaneously, or beam myself from one place to another. But the truth is that life is actually package deals. It's not a buffet. And I don't mean that to disempower us, but rather to re-empower us to actually live in a truthful situation, being able to make empowered decisions based on the reality of a situation, which is, I've got to choose a package. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not adjustments that can be made, but you cannot, for example, simultaneously live in two different places. You cannot simultaneously have two different full-time jobs. You cannot simultaneously be a full-time stay-at-home mother and a full-time high-powered CEO career person. You can choose. You absolutely have the power to choose which one you want to be. And it doesn't mean that as a high-powered CEO career woman, you can't also have a child. But you just can't be a stay-at-home full-time mother. You've got to choose. And in the same way, you're going to have to make a choice and say, okay, this package deal of my profession that feels like my identity, that feels like who I am, comes with it this stuff that I wish the package didn't include. But you don't have a magic wand to make people in that industry stop smoking or stop drinking or stop doing whatever they're doing. You don't have a magic wand to change that environment. What you do have the power to do is to change you, and also to decide, is this a package that works for me? Because you're not stuck. A lot of us think we're stuck when we're not stuck. You need to ask yourself, what works for you? And if that is a package you want to stay in, then figure out to work on yourself. I mean, on a personal level, when I decided to live in India, well, if I had a magic wand, I have to, in all honesty and transparency, if I had a magic wand, there's a few things I would change. Not just about India, there's a few things I would change about anywhere I've lived in the world. But as a package deal, I would much rather live here than live anywhere else in the world. As a package. But since those things are things that I cannot change because I don't have a magic wand, and it's not a buffet, but a package deal, my only option then becomes to change myself such that those things don't bother me, such that they don't steal my peace. And that's, if you want to stay in that package, that's what you've got to work on, is how to not have the anxiety, how to not feel like you have to smoke just because everybody else is smoking.
Actually, the thing is that the negative vibes rub onto you. And I remain silent. I do not back answer, nor do I retaliate, because I don't want to become them. So I just keep quiet. That is the reason that I get anxious that why is the world like that?
And that leads you to smoke then?
That leads me to go on to take a smoke.
So in that case, what it means is we've got to work on your anxiety, which is to realize I'm not in charge of them. I'm only in charge of me. I can be a transmitter of energy. Rather than sitting alone having anxiety and smoking and feeling like, why are they like that? If instead I could use that time to meditate, to connect with myself, to recharge myself, so that when I go into that environment, I can share and spread love and peace and good values. That's going to not only be beneficial for you, but it's going to actually impact the environment. And so what that means is that what you've got to do is work on the internal part. Let's say Chalotika Mange, you're going to stay in that environment. Accept that you're not going to change them. Accept that the change needs to come from within. Accept that your swastiti is not going to be determined by paristiti. That the external situation is not going to determine your internal situation. But rather that you're going to carry your swastiti into that paristiti and change them. Without the agenda that I'm going in here to change them, but just you're going to carry the love, carry the peace, carry the clarity into that situation that will vibrationally change them. Beautiful.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. If we were given the opportunity to be happy all of the time, should we take it? Of course. You know, the point of spiritual practice that brings us closer and closer to truth is to experience joy. Ultimately, what do any of us really want in life? We want to be happy. If you go around and I say, all right, tell me your goals. Some of you may have goals that say, I want to become the CEO of a company. Somebody may have a goal that says, I want to lose 10 pounds. Somebody may have a goal that says, I want to make this much money, or I want to help this many people, or be of service in this way, or I want to get married and have these children, or whatever goal we may set for ourselves. ultimately, if you look at why you want it, at the end of the day, it's so I can be happy. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually really kind of a tragedy that we feel embarrassed. You know, when you say that the bottom line of all of our goals, even if they seem selfless, even if they seem altruistic, the bottom line is so that I'll be happy. And there is nothing to be embarrassed about by that. Happiness is actually our birthright. It's our nature. But it's important to be honest with yourself and realize whatever I'm doing, whatever goal I have, I've made that a goal because I believe, whether it's true or not, but I believe that once I accomplish that goal, I will be happy. Whether I will be happy because I will have more money and be able to buy more things, and I think that things make me happy, or whether I think that power is going to make me happy, that getting people's respect will make me happy, whether it's because I think that having a spouse and having kids and having that kind of family life will make me happy, or whether it's because I've experienced that when I give to others, I feel happy. Whatever it is, at the end of the day, whatever my goal is, it's so that I will feel happy. You know, people say to me sometimes, God, you know, you left everything back there in America and you came to India, and how did you leave everything? And it's a really skewed and quite incorrect way of looking at things, and I'm always sure to point this out politely, of course, but to point it out, because this idea that somehow leaving what you could consider a world of material prosperity for a world of spiritual prosperity, the idea that somehow that's a great sacrifice and that I've left everything, and that there's something very noble about that I've somehow made a great sacrifice. And what I always tell people is, I actually made exactly the same choice everybody makes, which is, what package deal of life is most likely to give me the most happiness? It's not that I thought, oh, I'll have the most happiness in America, but I'm going to live in India anyway, just to be noble or just to sacrifice. It's that I looked around and realized this life, in its simplicity, in the opportunity to actually be of service to people, in the connection spiritually to God, to a community, actually makes me more happy, both on a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour basis, as well as on a bigger picture level, than the life I came from in America, or the life that I continue to see when I go back and visit. So there's nothing to be embarrassed about or ashamed about in realizing that we make the choices we make because at the end of the day, we think that they're the ones that are going to make us the most happy. So why would we not choose to be happy all the time, right? For those of you who just came in, the question was, if we were given the opportunity to be happy all of the time, should we take it? And I said, of course. Now, spiritually, when we talk about equanimity and this way of approaching and dealing with the ups and downs of life. It doesn't mean seek them out. It doesn't mean give up what makes you happy and be miserable on purpose. Life is up and down. The only way to actually be happy all the time is through a spiritual practice of cultivating equanimity. There's no other magic wand. No matter what you dedicate yourself to, if it's something in the outer world, what you look like, how much money you make, how good your career is, how popular you are, whatever it may be, it's going to go up and down. There are going to be moments of sadness, of despair, of anger, of frustration, of jealousy, of competition. The only way to actually be happy all the time is to cultivate this equanimity which says, whatever arises, I'm going to see it with the same eyes. In the same way that we can walk through, for example, a flower garden and see roses and see jasmine and see gardenias and see sunflowers, and maybe you like the roses the best or the jasmine the best. But that doesn't mean that you're unable to appreciate the other flowers. It doesn't mean that you're going to wish that the rose were like a jasmine. Or, you walk down the fruit aisle of a grocery store, or you walk through a fruit orchard, and you see bananas, and you see oranges, and you see apples, and you would never say, my God, why can't this banana be juicy like an orange? It's a bad banana because it's not juicy. You understand that bananas aren't juicy by nature. Oranges are juicy by nature. And you may have a preference for one over the other, but you're able to see them all in their own divine perfection as they are. And so the only way to actually be happy all the time is to develop that ability to see life like that. I may prefer success over failure. I may prefer pleasure over pain, gain over loss, health over sickness. But to be able to see all of them as just different varieties of flowers in the garden of my life, each there to offer me something. So, yeah, if you've got the opportunity to be happy all the time, absolutely take it. And you do have that opportunity. Not by denying the sad moments of life. Real joy, real happiness is not superficial. It's not about denial or repression or suppression. It's about being able to, even in the face of loss or failure or illness, to be able to see that presence of the divine in all, to see that presence of your opportunity to get closer to the divine in all. There's a reason that we talk about a dark night of the soul rather than a bright morning of the soul, right? Because when we go through these spiritual experiences, they tend to happen a lot more in dark nights than in bright mornings. So if you've got a bright morning, you love it and see it and appreciate it and enjoy it for the beautiful bright morning it is. And when you've got a dark night, you see it for the opportunity to connect with the soul, to go deeper, to go within, to find the light within. Here in India, we We worship, we celebrate full moons, the Purnima, but we also celebrate the new moon, the Amavasya. And it's really interesting because you think, well, why in the world would you celebrate a dark night, a moonless night? The biggest celebration of the year, Diwali, the festival of lights, falls on Amavasya, the new moon. No moon in the sky. And it's the festival of light. Because it's a teaching that even in the darkness of the darkest night, there is light. But that light is inside. That light is in connecting to the divine. So the magic wand for happiness is not there only should be full moons in my life. It's that when there's a full moon, I'm able to appreciate the light coming from outside. And when there's a moonless night, a dark night, I'm able to find the light from within. That's the magic wand. It's the only way. So, yes, when you have the opportunity, you should choose it. And yes, we all have the opportunity all the time. In every moment, we can choose joy. Not by denial, not by suppression, as I said, but simply by recognizing, is this a moment to find joy in the moon shining overhead? Or is it a moment to look for the joy in the moon shining inside? But the opportunity is always there.
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week. And I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on Om Times Radio.